Stacey Abrams' historic run to become governor of Georgia made her a star in the Democratic Party. And since her campaign ended, many have wondered what's next for the first candidate in nearly 20 years to almost turn the reliably red state of Georgia to blue. Democrats in Washington have been courting Abrams to consider challenging Georgia's freshman Senator David Perdue in 2020. But she may still have her eyes on becoming the nation's first black female governor. Joining me now is the former Democratic candidate for governor of Georgia, Stacey Abrams. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be back.
Let me ask you, are you going to run for the Senate next year? Are you going to wait and run for governor again? Have you made a decision, Stacey?
I've not made a decision yet. I am incredibly grateful for the energy and the enthusiasm and the advice that I'm getting. But I want to make sure that I'm the right person, that this is the right time, and that it's the right job for the work that I want to do. I've been very privileged to have conversations with senators and with advocates both in Georgia and across the country, and I plan to make a decision by the end of this quarter, by the end of March.
By the end of March, you'll make a decision. But tonight,
yes,
you are clearly one of the stars of the party with a proven track record by what you were able to do in Georgia. And I would say, had we had voting protection and Section 5 in terms of preclearance in Georgia, I think you would have likely won that election. The clear question is, as we continue to deal with these issues, you have championed voting rights throughout your campaign, throughout the candidacy, and continuing. Will the Democratic Party continue to be challenged by you and others, including me, to deal with the voting violations, moving of polling sites, and all kinds of shenanigans that your opponent did in the election?
We have been working hard with the state party, with the national party, with Congress to lift up voter suppression and its effect on voting rights to a national conversation. We know that we did not have a fair fight in Georgia. That's why I created Fair Fight Action, which is an organization that is dedicated to pushing for voting rights for everyone. Because while it may be targeted at certain vulnerable communities, largely people of color and the poor and rural communities, it erodes the democracy that all of us rely on, regardless of party. And so the organization we founded is not a partisan organization. It's a democracy organization. But I'm excited about the energy that the new Democratic House has put behind this conversation, but also the bipartisan conversation that's already started in Congress. There are Republicans who understand that if there's an erosion of our democracy, none of us are safe and none of our elections are safe. And so I'm going to be working across the aisle and across the country to lift up the issue of making sure every election in Georgia is a fair fight.
Now, you have said, and I agree, that the Democrats cannot run in 2020, whether you are on the Senate ticket in Georgia or not, as just against Trump, but for something, what they're going to do for the American people. What are the three things that you would like to see as central issues in the 2020 national as well as statewide races?
Healthcare has to be a central conversation. We know that the GOP and Donald Trump have tried to erode the protections that were put in place by the Affordable Care Act. But we have to go beyond that, because in states like Georgia, even though we have access to the ACA, the Republican leadership to expand Medicaid means that thousands of Georgians still suffer without health care. And we're one of 14 states without real access. We need to expand access to health care, and that has to be front and center. Number two is wages. We know that wages are stagnant or falling, but costs are rising. And it does not make sense in a nation that is so capable of greatness that so many are falling behind. The fact that our federal workers found themselves in bread lines with 2 weeks of no pay signals how hard it is for our families, those who are serving and protecting us, to live from paycheck to paycheck. And number three, we've got to deal with the green economy. We've got to address the fact that climate change is real, but it's having a real effect on how we live our lives. Whether you're looking at Puerto Rico, or the storms that hit Georgia, or what happened in Texas, or the storms that keep hitting the East Coast, we know that climate change is real, and it's having an effect on our economy, on our people, and on our lives. And I think if the candidates for president focus on health care care, on wages, and on the climate, we can win this election in 2020.
One of the things I've observed about you, unlike some others, is that as your star rose to higher heights last year, you remained very humble and very grounded. What advice would you give to a lot of young people that are now thinking of entering or have entered the political arena? What advice would you give them that you learned, given even all of your experience, lessons you learned in the gubernatorial race in Georgia last year?
Look, I like to tell folks, I've met me. I'm not overly impressed. I know why I do what I do. I believe that poverty is immoral, but I also think it's economically inefficient, and I think it's a solvable problem. It's a waste of human capital. And I grew up with parents who were involved in the civil rights movement, and they taught me that you may not win every battle you fight, but your responsibility is to get in that fight. And that's why, whether I'm fighting for voting rights across this country or fighting to make sure that Georgia is a battleground state in the 2020 election, what I hope everyone learned from my campaign is that you talk to everyone, but you speak authentically about what you believe and who you are. And so whether I was talking about my brother and his challenges with incarceration and drug addiction, or my own personal struggle with debt, or the fact that every single day I got to meet new people in places that didn't expect to see me and I didn't expect them to vote for me, we transformed Georgia. And we built a multiracial, multi-ethnic coalition, urban, rural, and suburban, and we can win if we work together. And so anyone who's getting started, remember that this is possible. But you can't take yourself too serious, but you have to take everyone and their needs seriously.
The mission is bigger than the individual, and I think you
Absolutely.
personified that. And believe me, we're going to be watching you and continue to see where your career helps not only take you, but take the nation. You've been very positive. Thank you very much for being on again. Stacey Abrams.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.